those women who are like, oh, that guy's so hot, even though he
Right.
killed women, you can kill me or whatever. They're kind of
Yeah.
the equivalent to the passport bros we were talking about.
You know, because a lot of guys are going to be like, oh, see, this proves that if you're an attractive guy, then
Like mentally, there are some issues if you're like fantasizing over some murderer guy.
right.
But why are you letting that make you further hate women? We've talked about this, I feel like, a few times too, that men often get it wrong where they're like angry at women, thinking
Right.
that if I yell at her, if I belittle her on the internet, it'll change her into the woman that I want her to be.
A lot of guys are going to use that to be like, oh, see, if you're hot, then it doesn't matter. And that's not what it is. There is a trigger of attraction for being dangerous. That is true. That still doesn't make that appropriate. I mean, it's just very poor taste. What do we have for the drama for this?
The drama. This has turned into the drama
I mean, it's like,
segment.
what's going on? It's
Well, you were telling me about some, I don't know, thing that I haven't seen.
oh, the serial.
But you saw
or not,
it.
It's not serial. I don't even know the full story. But there was that whole thing on TikTok with the man versus bear thing. Remember that? It's like, which would you choose? Like, who's safer? And that got pretty big. And then it didn't look too good when some guy that murdered a couple of women and bragged about it to his dad, and now he's got convicted on trial with tattoos all over his face. A white guy, by the way. Now a lot of women on TikTok were reposting his and saying all kinds of things and playing the $1 Million Baby music when he was walking into the courtroom, and so it just didn't look too good, right? So
Yeah, but here's the thing, right? I hear what you're saying. And I get where it can kind of go with the man versus bear thing.
yeah,
But on the other side, like those women who are like, oh, that guy's so hot, even though he
Right.
killed women, you can kill me or whatever. Those are very unhealed women. They're kind of the
Yeah.
equivalent to the passport bros we were talking about. Those are unhealed men.
Yeah.
And so acting like that's a majority of women
no,
is not the right thing. And just like acting like passport bros are a majority would not be the right thing either.
Yeah.
So it's like those sort of women who would be like, oh, I would let him murder me. Like, I just feel like also as a woman, I'd be like, you are not mentally stable. Like, it's obvious.
Yeah.
Because even if some guy was like, there was some hot woman serial killer and he was like, oh, I'd let her kill me. I'd be like, okay, you have other issues.
And I mean, that's the extreme one, but there is just a lot of like, I wonder, like, I'll write to him in the psycho word or whatever, like a lot of stuff like
Which
that. But
some people say stuff like that, and some people actually do stuff like that.
and they do, but I think, I mean, but the other thing about that too is to understand that it's like, because a lot of guys are going to be like, oh, see, this proves that if you're an attractive guy, then, but it's not just that the guy was necessarily attractive. I mean, he did have a lot of face tattoo. Well, but that's also part of the appeal too, is that there is a biological switch inside of women that is attracted to men that are dangerous or capable of violence, right? Now, again, it doesn't mean...
But I don't think that it's in a way where they're like thinking that it would happen to them. It's in a way of...
No.
It's like a very perverse way of being like, okay, he is capable of this act of violence, so he would protect me to the utmost degree if this happened. And it's not, that's not a linear deduction, even though they're trying to act like it is.
No, but it's a biological, like it's an unconscious sort of attraction trigger, is that if a man is dangerous and capable of violence, that women have that unconscious attraction trigger to him, right? It doesn't have as much to do with how he looks. So I mean, that it doesn't hurt. I'm just saying that there's that piece of it. But again, it's not like you should act upon those things.
Here's also
but
the flip side, though, to what you're talking about, this whole situation, right? Like, this is, again, another man who killed women.
Right.
There's a guy in San Diego who was a TikToker who killed his estranged wife because she was with some other man.
Right.
That happens way more often than the reverse.
For sure, yeah.
And so women, they are naturally a little bit more afraid of men, and they should be because it does happen. But they don't even allow that to keep them from interacting with men. They could easily be like, I have no idea if a man's going to be this way. And in some degree, you do have to think that way when you're getting to know a man, because men can also flip a switch and potentially murder you depending on how their anger management is.
That's
so
true,
it's like, I don't have a lot of empathy for men who are like, see, they want this serial killer, when like men actually end up being the killers to women a lot of the time. Like in these instances, it's most of the time it's men killing women. And most of the time it's them getting upset about something.
Right.
I just read a book for a book club that I'm in. And a guy in the book got pissed at a man who made a video game because his wife married someone else in the video game and left him. And so he went and shot up the place.
That does happen for sure.
It's typically men, but women still don't allow that to keep them from dating. And so if they can do that, if they can literally risk potentially being murdered to go on a date with you. Why are you trying to demonize her over, like, even though, again, it's not like mentally there are some issues if you're like fantasizing over some murderer guy. But why are you letting that make you further hate women? Does that make sense? Because women aren't letting it, again, they are cautious. I'm not saying they're not, and they should be. But they're still putting themselves out there. They're still risking that to go on dates with people. They just have to be smarter about it. So that's why I'm like, I don't, it's not a really good argument to me, because I'm like, you guys like that are in the comments like, oh, look at this girl, like she's fantasizing over a guy that murdered some woman. Yeah, that's not okay. But guys tend to forget that, like, even if they're not the guy that's doing it, that women do get murdered by guys that they're with. And then, like, but they still put themselves out there. They're still trying to find love. They're still trying to be in a relationship. And instead of letting it, like, take them all the way out and they turn into passport hoes or whatever, passport girls, you know, they're still trying to go out there.
The equivalent of the passport hoe is the woman that's flown out to Dubai.
Okay, well,
that's the passport
men need to also stop doing that if they're upset about that too. Which, look, like, it's the same with the OnlyFans thing. Like, you can't be mad and then buying somebody's OnlyFans.
But it's not the same men. That's the thing. It's like, look, the guy that's flying a woman out to Dubai is not the guy that's complaining.
I agree.
You know, it's like, so.
But don't you think that, like, men would want to help influence other men, like men who are so upset about women doing OnlyFans? Don't you think there should be some men who are, like, doing it in the right way, being like, we should be encouraging these women to not have to sell themselves? Like, I haven't seen anything like that out there.
They think they're encouraging it by
and women do need to do this stuff on their own. I'm not saying that, you know, men have to come along and do it, but I'm just saying that we've talked about this, I feel like, a few times too, that men often get it wrong, where they're like angry at women, thinking that if I yell at her, if I belittle her on the internet, it'll change her into the woman that I want her to be. Because that's how men act with each other, to encourage them to do something, right? They're harder on each other. But that is not, that's just going to get a woman to be like, I'm not going near you. And again, it's part of that, like, you seem unstable as a man. That's scary. You could murder me.
Exactly.
Like, it's not worth the risk. So I understand what you're saying. Those women who are like,
I just didn't like to see it, because I'm like, now it just is going to spark the whole debate again. Because I'm like, look, it's just, you know, because then, like I said, a lot of guys are going to use that to be like, oh, see, if you're hot, then it doesn't matter. And that's not what it is. There is a trigger of attraction for being dangerous. That is true. That still doesn't make that appropriate. I mean, for instance, if you post something like that and glorify this guy, and then the family of the people who were murdered sees that, they're not really going to enjoy that very much. That the guy that murdered, you know, that women are like, oh, but he's hot. Please, like, it's just very poor taste. So anyway, but it does make it hard to then do the man versus bear. It's like, and that's the thing that is upsetting about it, is that, look, if you just went and just said that a bear is safer than a man, but then you said, but I like this guy that murdered women, it completely deflates the argument from the man versus bear. But again, like I said, it's going to be different women and different.
It's a better than